this June 25th, 2025. Joining me today is going to be Hedia. She is a former Muslim. She has worked in our government in some very high positions. She's going to be a keynote speaker for us at our coming up fall conference this fall as well. Full details on that at worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. She has an interesting bio. You should go to her website. I think it's resurrectministry.org. Is that right, Logan? Resurrectministry.org. You should read her bio, folks. It's pretty amazing. And that's not everything. She's holding out on us. Yep, she's holding out on us. Because last week on the broadcast, she said something about when she met with Gaddafi. She just went glibly by. Well, when I was in Gaddafi's tent talking with Gaddafi, I was like, what, wait a minute, back up there. She was just going to blow right by that like that was just like nothing, you know, like when I went out to the grocery store. I said, really? Seriously? I'm hearing about this like everybody else for the first time on the air. I don't get any inside track. No, apparently not. And I'm guessing, friends, there are more stories like that one. Resurrectministry.com. Resurrectministry.com. You should read her bio. I thank my editor, Jill, for telling us about Hedia. She goes to not Jack Hayford. She goes to Jack Hibbs Church out in California. So I think that tells you a lot about her and where she's coming from when it comes to Bible prophecy and more. She's got a very powerful testimony. She'll be with us again for our upcoming 22nd annual national conference outside of beautiful Memphis, Tennessee, about 30 minutes outside, which, by the way, another major corporation has announced they're moving to Memphis. Now, if this was such a bad town as Stephen A. Miller and other people want to tell you, they wouldn't be moving big corporations here. Another big one's moving here. I never even heard of it, but apparently it's another auto supplier or something. We've already got a couple of them. And of course, we know we have FedEx, and then Fred Smith passed away at age 80 last week. That was sad for us here in the Mid-South. I think he got a C, by the way. He got a C. I always thought it was a D, but I saw a clip this week they're playing in the local media where he gave a speech talking about he got a C on his paper, business paper, for his business class on starting FedEx. He got a C. Well, what does that tell you? Well, among many things, many professors, they've never run a business. Yeah, I remember taking a business class at a community college, and I asked the business professor, what company or companies have you run? Zero. I was running a commercial cleaning company at the time. I had more business experience than he did. So I'm not shocked that a business professor would give poor Fred Smith a C on his paper of the idea of FedEx. Of course, he turned it into a multi-billion-dollar company. But they're here, of course, and now another one's coming. All this to say is a very nice area. Don't buy the bad press. You can show up. We're in the suburbs. Be like being in Waukesha or Overland Park, Kansas, you know. But Hedia will be with us along with a lot of other great speakers. But anyway, by the way, it is interesting the number of folks that are saying what we've been saying for so many years, and that is, if you want to be a lawyer or a doctor and that kind of thing, you're going to have to go to school. But why would anyone go to college? I don't understand why they would do that. None of our guys, well, I shouldn't say none of our guys. Some of our guys in the control room did. But a lot of our guys in the control room came right out of high school and started working for us. And we taught them a very, very advanced trade. Very advanced trade. Old-time apprenticeship. And they make very good livings. And I think we need to get back to more of that apprenticeship. I don't want the government projecting the supply and demand of the workforce. That's what I wrote about it against in my book in 1995. The idea of local workforce development boards that project the supply and demand of the workforce and then channel young people into the jobs they see coming. Well, that's a great way for the chambers of commerce and other outfits to flood the market with too many people of a particular trade, which then drives down prices, right? We don't need planned economies. That's failed over and over where it's been planned and tried. And if the government cannot predict the weather, you really think they can project the job market, what's going to be in demand, particularly with the knowledge base that's growing and jumping so much now. And then you add in AI. I think a lot of people have picked that up because now these kids get out of school with 6 figures in debt and they can't find a job. And yet I do know when we have said to people, I wouldn't go to college unless you're going to go get a degree as an accountant or a lawyer or a doctor or a nurse or whatever. They think that's just crazy talk. Everybody's got to go to college. And I don't know what it's like in your area, but people that don't go to college, a lot of them are really looked down in our area. People look down at them like somehow they're failures. Really? Well, what's interesting is a lot of Logan's friend group, they're now graduating from college. Guess what they're having a hard time finding? A job. And many of the young people we've trained as apprentices in our control room are making a better living wage than those that are getting out of college. Some of them have to resort to just, doing other things, waiting tables. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, we went to dinner not too long ago and talked to the waitress and asked her about herself, as we often do. Tell us about yourself. Are you in school? Did you go to school? She went to school and she had a degree in the nursing field. I think it was in ultrasounds. And I said, do you do that and then work here on the weekends? She said, no, I do this full time. I said, what about your degree? She said, I make more as a waitress at this restaurant than I do doing that job. So nothing wrong with that. I just think a lot of young people today are being led into a path of indebtedness. Not to mention, what are they learning? What's the worldview that they're learning in college, right? Isn't that where we lose a lot of our Christian kids, right, in college? Yeah, indeed we do. All right, so Fred Smith passed away, got a C in his class and on his paper to start FedEx, but built it into a billion-dollar company, multi-billion-dollar company. All right, joining me now is Hedia, resurrectministry.com. Welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be on with you again.
Great to be back with you. All right, it's been a very interesting, here we are on 74 Christian stations, I think, total. And I want to talk about, your Christian worldview and national security analysis of the last 2 weeks. And can I ask you, first of all, are you as exhausted as I am? When I got to the desk this morning, I let out a big sigh, and Logan was turning on a bunch of the lights above my head here, and he said, "Are you tired?" I said, "I am more than tired. I'm emotionally exhausted after this last 2 weeks, watching some of the infighting, people criticizing people who have good analysis of what's going on, yet they get criticized. They shouldn't be because they've been there, done that, and been in rooms with national security clearances like yourself. It's just been and just the emotion of watching what is happening to Israel. Our reporters on the ground over there, we're worried about him, of course. He's got kids. The other night, I texted him, "Are you okay?" He said, "Yes." But that missile landed where my son lives. I can't get a hold of him. So, we had to wait for several minutes, all praying. And finally, he texted back and said, "Praise the Lord, I got a hold of him." I mean, just the whole emotion of everything. Did you feel this? Are you feeling this as well?
Absolutely. And, as an American from an Iranian heritage, is particularly distressing for me. Let's face it, President Trump is doing amazing things, especially for us as Christians. The overturning of Roe versus Wade, the task force on protecting Christians against persecution, the anti-Semitic, preventing anti-Semitism task force, the religious, advisory board, though that definitely has its problems. But all of these efforts to kind of support Christians is amazing, and it's fantastic. But the way he's handling the Iran situation is a little bit distressing for me. I think the strikes were amazing. I think they were strategic and executed, as far as we know, with great precision and accuracy. And that part has been wonderful. But the talk on regime change, the back and forth about regime change is just killing me, because one day it's like absolutely no regime change, change. And then he puts out a True Social, yes, well, what would be so wrong with regime change? And then, apparently there's some private comments, Breitbart reports that he says, I don't want another Libya. And Iran is not Libya by any stretch of the imagination. So it's distressing to think that the conclusion of all of this, and he keeps talking about peace and they're going to come to the table. We've set their nuclear program back a couple years. So where are we then? And why are we negotiating peace? And why are we deciding that we're going to leave the mullahs in power? And what that means for the Iranian people that have not been praying for war, they're just praying for liberation. So it's been pretty upsetting.
Yeah. So that's how we feel too. I think we're on the same page. And I don't know if the radio audience will make sure the radio audience knows what the TV audience knows, and that is that your mom and dad were born in Iran. Your dad and mom moved to Beverly Hills, and with a lot of other Iranians who got out with some resources, quite a bit of resources left behind, but they came here and they assimilated and they got their businesses going again, investing in real estate and whatnot in California. What an American success story for them, right? But also, yes, you sent us pictures where the prince, the Shah's son, was in your home. So you knew him, your family knows him. What do you make of his leaving DC, flying to Paris, giving a speech? He has a 100-day plan. Is this all for naught now?
That's what I'm wondering. And I have to tell you that as we talked about on one of your other programs, the State Department historically has been very against Pahlavi. And so I wonder how successful a coup can be without support of the United States. And if you listen to his speech, first, he didn't really commit to going back. Then he says he's going to go back. But my husband and I were talking last night, when you look at the TV and you hear him speak, is that a man you're willing to die for? Because a revolution in Iran means you're going to risk your life, and you believe enough in him as a leader to risk your life. And I don't know if he has that charisma, if he has that kind of leadership quality to be a revolutionary. I think he's a wonderful scholar. He's a historian. He could be great on the council, but is he that revolutionary leader? I'm not quite sure that he is. Of course, he's, as far as we publicly know, the best option, but I don't know if the United States is also looking at that saying, well, I don't know if he's got the pull.
What do you make of those who say, well, his dad was a tyrant, his dad was a dictator, those kind of comments? The music's playing, so I'll let you think about that. And then another one I want you to address is, do you have any concerns about what is reported to be 900 pounds of highly enriched uranium that we don't know where it is in Iran? That and more. And then how about this one? I'll play another one for us to think about during the break. How do you think all this fits in with Bible prophecy, Gog, Magog, Iran involved in that coalition? Let's talk about all that with Hedia, with resurrectministry.com, resurrectministry.com. She hosts a regular show with her husband. You'll find there as well. We'll be right back.
Nature has a rhythm, a quiet strength, a way of restoring, protecting, and renewing us. Wellness isn't just about how you feel today. It's the quiet choices you make for tomorrow. At myvitamin.com/worldview, we've made daily self-care simple. Quality vitamins, daily supplements, and targeted nutrition. myvitamin.com/worldview makes it easy. Pure ingredients thoughtfully combined, tailored for your body. Formulated by a doctor who has over 25 years of medical practice experience and is a certified functional medicine provider. Visit myvitamin.com/worldview today and take the next step towards strength, balance, and resilience. Discover the wide range of med packs made for you and your loved ones. What you nurture today becomes the strength you walk in tomorrow.
All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us. President Trump has left the NATO meeting. I think that was in the Netherlands. Kind of an odd morning over there. The NATO chief called President Trump Daddy. Now, when I saw the video, I thought that has to be AI. This is absolutely fake. There's no way the NATO chief would refer to President Trump as daddy. But sure enough, he did. It was everywhere. And then a reporter asked President Trump about it. And he said, yes, he did. He did it very affectionately. So every day it's something, isn't it? At least that we could play on the air if we wanted to. Some things have been said recently we could not play on the air. But it's getting weirder by the moment. Joining me again is Hedia with resurrectministry.com, resurrectministry.com. Hedia, what about this 900? First of all, the Shah. People saying he is a tyrant. He was a dictator. Therefore, his son, Annie has taken that one on. She didn't like that at all. But what do you make about people repeating that about the Shah?
Well, yeah. So Annie's educated me quite a bit, actually, on the history of Iran. But I know when my parents left, so my parents left before the revolution, and they had the Savak, which was the security, the secret police. And it was a stifling country to live under. My father got a educational visa, came and studied at Northwestern to finish his medical studies, and then transferred to an H-1B as a work visa and spent 10 years at the VA, at the Veterans Administration. And so he did everything possible to, one, live the American dream, and second, to never go back to Iran. So it was oppressive in the sense that he oppressed political dissent, but as a society, it wasn't Islamic. So they didn't have the dress codes and the penal codes and all those things that Annie had suffered under. The Shah definitely didn't do all of that. When you look back on it, you see that a lot of the reporting, especially now, since we know so much more about the CIA and their underhandedness in other countries, that a lot of the propaganda coming out against Iran may have been about trying to suppress their kind of nationalization of the oil, trying to build themselves as a superpower, so that maybe all of that reporting wasn't necessarily true. But I know people like my father and many others, and he had, 5 brothers and sisters. My mother's she had 5 brothers and sisters. Everybody wanted to leave Iran for America because they didn't feel they had the opportunities in Iran, and it wasn't a free society. But when you look at Reza, his son, I don't believe he's his father. I mean, he's grown up in the States. He's been westernized. He has a different demeanor than his father did. And I don't believe he's going there to be a dictator. I really don't. But my problem, as I mentioned, was that I don't know if he has the charisma and the motivating power to be a leader. And especially a leader of all of these disparate groups and different ethnic minorities, and after the Islamic Revolution, and what role is Islam going to play in the country? And I don't know if he's that person. That's my concern.
Let's go to the 900 pounds of highly enriched uranium floating around Iran. How concerned are you about that?
Well, Trump addressed that in his remarks at NATO, where he said that that's absolutely impossible. We would have known, if you're referring to the coming out of the 3 sites that were hit.
Yes.
He says, no, they were absolutely buried. There's no way that could have come out. But from what I understand, there's a heat signature on those items if they were moved, and that we would have known, the Israelis would have known if it was moved ahead of time. So I don't know who to believe, but it strikes me as
because AIEA, if I got the initials right, they're not saying the same thing, are they?
They're not saying that it was removed, correct?
They were saying they're not sure right now from the interview I watched last night with Martha McCowan. They're being very dodgy. Let's just put it that way.
Exactly. And so Trump was like, unequivocal that no, it could not have been moved. We would have known if it was moved. It's impossible. It's heavy. There's no way they could have moved it. We would have seen it move.
Well, that's good news. Now, what about prophetically? Let's go to the eschatology part. Where do you see all this? I know it could change next week or next year, but right now, where do you see all this? I guess maybe put it this way, it'd be easier. We were all thinking, wait a minute, if you have a regime change and you go to a friendlier Iran, how does this fit with Bible prophecy? Maybe the country splits apart. We also know Persia was a collection of many countries that split apart that have various names today. So maybe that's what the Bible's referring to at that time. And now, of course, we're back on track with what's happening here. So does this at all change our view on a coalition against Israel in Ezekiel 38, 39 that includes Iran or Persia?
I don't think so. So interestingly enough, I thought we were looking at Jeremiah and that, they were the Lord was going to break the bow. So that comes from Jeremiah 49:34 through 39, where the Lord prophesies against Elam, which is southwestern Iran, and that he would break the bow and that it would destroy the princes of the region, and then he would set his throne in Elam. And all of us were so excited. Oh my goodness, maybe this is the breaking of Elam so that God would establish his throne. There'd be a great revival. So when I see peace, it actually does draw me closer to Ezekiel 38, because when you read through Ezekiel 38, it says that they were living in safety. And as of now or yesterday, they were not living in safety. They had unwalled cities. That's what Ezekiel 38 says, that when the war begins, they were living in safety with these unwalled cities. So it actually could be lining us up more for Ezekiel 38 rather than Jeremiah.
And then let's talk about what just happened in Damascus. We had 20 Christians blown up at a church on Sunday, correct?
Yes. Correct. And it was a Greek Orthodox church. And what was really distressing about that, of course, was that it was a suicide bomber and there were several martyrs. So I watched an interview of a woman whose husband was actually the one that fought one of the bombers, was able to remove the vest and kick the guy out. But then the vest eventually blew up and killed him and 7 of their family members. And he happened to be working in public safety. So she makes this public plea to Ahmadinejad that says, you have to answer for this, and you promise to protect minorities and especially Christians. So meanwhile, I'm sorry, but I can't trust Ahmadinejad. I no matter what kind of words that come out of his mouth, I cannot believe that a leopard changes spots that quickly.
And just to remind the audience, this is the new leader of Syria with the beard, the hijab beard.
Yes.
The Sharia beard, I should say, who basically was part of ISIS and all those other groups, and puts on a suit and gets a handshake from President Trump and now wants to be the leader of Syria.
Exactly. And so up until 3-4 months ago, there was a $10 million bounty on his head for killing Americans and Westerners all throughout the Iraq War. And so the thought that he's now this modern unifying president is just preposterous to me. But he came out with a number of statements saying he condemns the massacre, that his administration will do everything possible to find the culprits. Apparently, his interior ministry went in and killed 2 guys and claimed that those were the ones that had orchestrated the bombing. But I don't really think the Syrian Christian community has any confidence in it. There was a number of reports where they said, thank you for your condolences. Thank you for attempting to, say you're against this, but we want to see action and we want to see real protection of our communities. And the tragedy is that Christians made up 10% of Syria. There were 22 million people population and has dwindled down now to a couple 100,000. And so they're really at the mercy of the Syrian government. And I would like to see what they really do to protect that community. I think the world is waiting to see, because Ahmadinejad, the leader, can easily separate himself from these groups by saying, oh, they're renegade, militia groups. I have no control over that. I find that very hard to believe.
Let's go now to New York, the primary last night. Cuomo, former governor of New York, loses in the Democrat primary for mayor of New York City. And the gentleman that won, he kind of came out of nowhere. He is a Muslim. He is the self-described socialist, Zohran Mamdani, and he's 33 years old. He was a state lawmaker. He's focusing in on free childcare, free buses, new apartments, higher minimum wage. Of course, all this is going to be paid for apparently by soaking the rich with more taxes. And he did have some very slick produced social media videos setting out this whole vision of his. Can you believe we're 24 years since 9/11 And New York City just elected a self-described Islamist who's also showing up at rallies. And we got the videos, we played them, basically shouting the same message as Hamas and the other groups, right?
Sorry, it cut out a little bit right before your last sentence.
Basically promoting the Hamas worldview. He shows up at some of these rallies, and we have videos of him, saying these things, horrific things.
Honestly, I was not paying much attention to him because I thought it was just a weird blip in the news. I was like, that's never going to happen. I mean, especially with all this stuff on Columbia campuses, on the campus of Columbia, this is never going to happen. And when it was announced that he won the primary, I was floored. I'm thinking, one of the largest Jewish communities in this country, and I believe anywhere outside of Israel, is in New York, and they have a mayoral candidate that is clearly anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian. I mean, he set up the Students for Justice in Palestine at his college.
That's right.
He joined Jewish Voices for, Peace, which is this radical secular Jewish group that's against Israel. And he came out literally 1 week after the horrific massacre on October 7th, saying that this was a genocide, stopping the genocide of Palestinians. So his views are extremely public. I mean, there's stuff all over the internet about how virulently anti-Israel and anti-Jewish he is, and yet he's risen to this point in power. So though he has tremendous financial backing, both from his leftist and Islamist background, so he's got both of those. He's got the squad supporting him. He's got all of these progressive candidates supporting him. What I don't understand are New Yorkers. Because if you want to understand how London looks the way it does, or even the Epic City project in Plano, Texas, this is how it starts, is that, you listen to somebody give a couple of good stump speeches and you elect them into government. And before you know it, there is, as he's advocated, halal meals in every school. There's prayer places in every school. And he's pushing for, he even created legislation as an assemblyman to stop nonprofits from being able to support Israel. What kind of anti-American legislation could go through like that? I mean, it hasn't been voted in, but there's a tremendous amount of support, and he's even expanded it. And yet the New York people still think this is a good candidate for America. I mean, for a freedom-loving people. I'm just shocked.
I would think that a lot of Jews would be selling their properties and getting out of New York as fast as they can. I mean, I would have gone a long time ago. I can't believe President Trump still owns Trump Tower. I can't believe he hasn't put that thing on the market and gotten rid of that and gotten out of there after what happened to him. Because this guy is saying that what they're going to do in New York is going to be the model for the Democrat Party, which includes grocery stores that are going to come in and be, government buildings so they don't pay rent. They're going to be nonprofit, and they're going to sell cheap groceries and put everybody out of business. We'll be right back.
I'll tell you one little quick story. We had a Worldview Weekend client who lived in California, lost their house, very wealthy guy. He didn't use Bitcoin. He came over here, drove to Arizona with $286,000 worth of his gold because he had no money and no house available. His bank was shut down because he couldn't have access to his bank account.
Was this during the fire? Was this during the fires?
During the fire. Didn't have his driver's license. He lost it. The state wouldn't give him a new license because he had no active mailing address. Real mess. So he came to Arizona to buy a house. He's moving everything over. He said, the only thing I got in my possession that I can get liquid with right now is my gold. I gave him a check for $286,000, and guess what? I didn't need his social, his driver's license. Sort of smiled, and I said, I know you and Brannon talked about how this worked, but boy, this is great. I feel good. I got my money. Nobody bothered me, and I'm protected, and it's private.
Just simply go to worldviewgold.com, fill out the form, worldviewgold.com. Welcome back. Glad you're with us, Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com. Stay tuned for Crosstalk with Jim Schneider at the top of the hour. VCY.org, VCY.org, America's original Christian talk program since the 1970s. Do you have our app, by the way? You can get it at worldviewtube.com/apps. The app is absolutely free. The programming is also free, brought to you by our foundation, worldviewfoundation.com. You can get the app for iPhone or Android at worldviewtube.com/apps. And you will want to set and choose the alerts to get our alerts, our push notifications, because we do go live. We went live this past weekend due to the breaking news. We went live Saturday afternoon, Saturday night about 7:20 Central. We went live the Saturday before that, the Sunday before that. So when we do, we put out a push notification, say we're going live, and that generally means we're bringing in a panel of experts as well, which have included my current guest right now. So if you want to get those alerts so you know when we're going live outside of what is our normal schedule, you'll be able to be notified of that breaking news live broadcast. If you already have our app and you did not choose the push notifications, you can still turn them on. You go to settings on your phone, then you go to notifications, you look for the Worldview Tube app, you click that, and then you push the little button so it goes green for turning on notifications. Now, whenever we push out, we're going live, you'll get a little notice on your screen will pop up and then pop down, go away, a push notification. So be sure to follow us because we never know when there's going to be breaking news, but when the news is big enough, we generally assemble a panel and go live. And clearly a lot of you have come to expect that because on Saturday afternoon, evening, our numbers were just huge, Logan said. And there's a lot of people not on our push notifications. So apparently they thought, well, this is big news. You know, Howse is going to put together a panel and be live. And so a lot of you came over. So we're endeavoring to do that. So please tell people about our apps. They're free. Okay, worldviewtube.com/apps. Hedia, her website is resurrectministry.com, resurrectministry.com. So this New York candidate for mayor who just won the primary, which means he'll probably win the general, he's talking about, and I played the video on TV last night, we're going to set up government grocery stores. I mean, talk about, socialism. Government grocery stores. So they obviously are going to use some government building, so they don't have to pay rent. They're going to be nonprofit. They don't have to pay taxes. Of course, they're going to get all kinds of waivers on thus government, taxes and everything else, paperwork, everything else, right? And then they're going to basically sell the groceries at cost. And can you imagine being a family that's been in the grocery business for maybe 100 plus years in New York, passed down generation to generation? This is one of our very, if not the very largest city we have in America. I hope this isn't a trend that we're going to see across the country. Islamic Marxist running and winning and then setting up socialist cities like this. I mean, we have that to a degree already, but this guy wants this to be the model for the Democrat Party. He's come out and announced that. Hedia?
It is so distressing to me, and I hope we can impress upon your audience how important it is for Jews and Christians to be doing everything possible to get this guy defeated. I don't know if there's even a possibility of a Republican candidate winning in New York, but just the thought that this is setting a precedence for someone to change literally everything we believe in as a country. So not only the Marxist ideology, but the Islamist ideology, and creating this platform that is the antithesis of liberty, that is the antithesis of freedom, of economic prosperity, of capitalism. It goes against everything we represent as a nation. And it's just so upsetting that people aren't rising up and being outraged at the thought of this guy winning control of one of the largest cities in America. It's really quite distressing. And I think if we don't stop it, we talk about this when we talk about Epic City, that what happened, who was the person that sold them 420 acres? What are people willing to sacrifice in order to preserve our values? Are we willing to sacrifice? So some people in New York could be like, wow, that sounds great. A grocery store that's going to start to sell us insects and tell us it's good, right? Isn't that what the global New World Order tells us? We're going to eat bugs and like it. So it's just, some people may think, oh, that's great. Free buses, free, cheap food. That'll be fantastic. But no, this is against what we believe in as a democracy and as a country. and it's destroying the foundations of our society. People really have to wake up and realize that.
Well said. What do you make of the attention now that's shifted finally? You know, I don't want to keep saying it over and over, but we've been talking about terror cells for so long on this broadcast, for so many years. And of course, we mentioned last week that, hey, we strike Iran, then you open up the possibility of that. We even talked in the past about blackmail. Could they use terror cells in the country as blackmail? We've talked about that in the past. It sounds like they tried, because we're told, it's leaked out in the press, that someone told President Trump at, what was it, the G7 meeting, that, hey, there was a message sent through somebody, back channels. We have terror cells. You strike us, we better release them. So they did attempt the blackmail that we had warned about on this broadcast. How many governors, how many mayors, how many presidents have been blackmailed without us knowing as a nation? Well, apparently we just found out that was attempted, and President Trump didn't care, which is good, because we don't want to negotiate with terrorists like that. But we now see a big emphasis on terror cells, which, again, they didn't really want to talk about for years and years. That just kind of went away. Now we're getting reports that the FBI is moving their resources from immigration enforcement to counterterrorism, which leads me to believe, with these resources being moved now and the threat level being elevated, according to Kristi Noem in a clip we played yesterday, they're seeing something here. They're seeing something, and the chatter by the news media now in a chorus is about potential strikes on the homeland. What are your thoughts as a national security expert that's been in these kind of meetings?
So what happened under the Biden administration is, because they wanted to go after Trump supporters after the J6 event, they basically ratcheted up the numbers for domestic terrorism from what they called far-right nationals, white nationals. There was a variety of different terminology that was used. And so agents were moved from Islamic terror groups to domestic American groups. And that was a huge travesty. It was a nightmare. They've had 1,200 open cases going after grandmothers that were walking by the Capitol, some of whom never even entered the building. And that took the FBI's focus off of its core mission that it has been since 9/11, which is Islamic terrorism. So now, Cash comes in, Bongino underneath him. They have to shift those resources back, but it's not like a push of a button. You have to get a whole bunch of investigations closed. You have to move agents off of what they were focused on before. And as we know, the immigration crisis was first on the agenda, because that's what Trump promised, to close the borders. So instead of going straight back to Islamic terrorism, they have to go to the immigration portfolio. And now they have to move them back to Islamic terror. So I'm a little concerned that shift, because it takes a long time to open investigations. You have to go through guardian leads, you have to develop the evidence, and then it has to be approved by management. You open the investigation, you gather the intel. It's not this, immediate process. And so going through the steps of doing that, I'm hoping with the leadership we have in place, that'll go fast enough to stop potential terror strikes. But I think that's always a possibility. Mm-hmm. So we have, gangs that we're going after. We have the Islamic terrorists. We have the nexus between gangs and the Islamic terrorists. We have apparently 1,200 Iranian-backed Iranian immigrants in the United States, 720 that were released back into the country. And those are just the ones we knew about. So, of course, there's a heightened threat. And I've told people, even though it turned out not to be a foreign terrorist at the church in Wayne in Michigan, that we have to remain vigilant. If you saw the video from that, it is really extraordinary. There is, a VBS program going on, and then you see this security officer pull out his weapon. He looked like a police officer, just the way he drew his weapon, going after these guys. And many, many lives were saved because they had situational awareness. They were on their guard, they were ready, they were prepared. And so we have to maintain our own situational awareness wherever we are, to make sure that if there is an attempted terrorist attack, we are able to respond with force.
Mm. It's very interesting that you mentioned these gangs, because I was going to bring that up, not knowing that you were about to say that. Here is a map I have from DEA. Now, this is an older map from the Drug Enforcement Agency. I wish they would update it, but it's an older map from a few years ago. Areas of influence of major Mexican transnational criminal organizations. And they show them spread throughout the U.S. We know for a matter of fact, according to Dave Gobbets, who's gone in undercover about 425 mosques in America, we hired him to go down to Epic. He filed a report for us and on what's going on down there and gave us several interviews on it. We paid for his trip down there and housing and all that goes with it, an honorarium. And he has said that it's very well known that in the Islamic world, they're telling them to go out of these mosques and build relationships with gang members that have the automatic weapons and what's necessary. And now we have a map by the DEA from several years ago showing these Mexican transnational criminal organizations across the U.S. Of course, that's just Mexican. How about the ones from Venezuela or Nicaragua and MS-13 and all these others? Did you run across anything like this when you were inside working in the government that you can speak to?
Not a lot that I could speak to, but it was a threat from decades ago. So the nexus between criminality and the terrorists was known even 10, 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. So that's been happening for a while. The thing that ratchets it up at this point is that the Trump administration is going after these gangs. So they have won a vengeance, that they're trying to unleash havoc in the United States as a consequence. Look at the riots in Los Angeles, but also they find, so where they were able to operate somewhat in the shadows in the United States, now they're kind of front and center. And so they're looking for allies. And this is a very common occurrence because I was dealing with the East Asian gang problem in London. With MI5 and MI6 because they saw that nexus very common over there because a lot of them are drug dealers. And so it is a known phenomena, and I think it's just only increasing here in the United States as a result of the immigration crackdown and the national security threat and they've been designated as foreign terrorist organizations.
Oversight Project put out cell phone locations linking far-left protest organizations to Iran and China. I mean, they did a lengthy report on this, pinging those cell phones, and a lot of those people visiting various buildings tied back to what appears to be, again, organizations that are then tied back right into Iran, right into China. Wow. 1-800-347-9829. Phone line's now open, folks. Your thoughts, your comments, your questions. 1-800-347-9829, 1-800-347-9829. Get on board, your thoughts, your comments, your questions for my guest. Her website, by the way, again, is resurrectministry.com, and she'll be a keynote speaker at our 22nd annual national conference, October 3rd, Friday night, Saturday, October 4th. Full details and to secure a seat. And we've really dropped the ticket price because we've been able to cut the cost drastically, pass that savings on to you. There are only 350 seats available in this beautiful theater owned by our town here in Collierville. So it's a town, the police department is fully supporting us, and we will have security. So you'll be safe. Come on.
A lot of people are having great success with a weight management program with Bella Trim, but it's just a tool. In terms of ingredients, Chromex or chromium picolinate improves the actions of insulin, so you have better glucose management, and in addition, it promotes fat utilization. Fat utilization or fat burning is also a feature of metabolite, which are two botanicals that stimulate a switch called AMP kinase, and so you tend to burn fat, reduce belly fat or visceral fat. Who doesn't want that? Metabolite has the ability to stimulate satiety or reduce those cravings. That's really very, very important. And it does that by raising GLP-1 levels. In addition, we've addressed the microbiome by using prebiotics. Healthier microbiome, better weight management.
Now come out that the vice mayor of a suburb, a town or city not too far from Los Angeles, has come out and is calling on the gangs by name and wanting to know, where are you? Where are your leadership? This is your territory. You need to come out and you need to deal with these, I guess, federal guys, federal ICE people that are coming in here. This is your territory. Where are you? This really fits with what we're talking about. I want to get a quick comment from Hedia before we go to the phone lines on this. This is breaking news this morning. Have you seen this, Hedia?
I have not.
Yeah, she's asking him, where are you at?
This just goes from crazy to crazier. I just can't imagine. And I think last I heard, they were pulling the Marines out, but were willing to deploy them again if necessary. So it's frightening to think that they would be calling on open revolt against the U.S. military. That's wild. And
this is, again, Homeland Security is putting this out today, made by the vice mayor of this Udahay, California.
I haven't even heard of that.
Yeah. She calls for criminal gangs, including the vicious 18th Street gang, to commit violence against our brave ICE law enforcement. This kind of garbage has led to a more than 500% increase in assaults against our ICE law enforcement officers. Secretary Noem has been clear: if you assault a federal officer, you will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. The whole thing shows me that this country is a tinderbox for violence. I mean, when you and I were growing up, and even before the times I was paying attention to this kind of thing in the 60s or maybe 70s, because either I wasn't born or I was too young, you didn't see elected officials going out and cheering them on, members of a House or the Senate or governors or mayors. This really shows you how dangerous this can get real fast, and it really is very concerning, and obviously so to our listeners, because the phone lines are lighting up here. Daniel in New Jersey, line one. Daniel, thank you for calling in, Daniel. Hi, Daniel.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. What are your thoughts today, Daniel?
My question is, my grandparents were immigrants to this country, and they came in through Ellis Island, and I'm not entirely sure about what kind of checks and balances and vetting process they went through, but I'm curious, for countries that are affiliated with terrorist organizations, known terrorist organizations, or they have terrorist presence in their countries, and they want to obtain visas to this country, I'm curious about what kind of vetting process they have to go through in order to be legally admitted to this country.
Good question. Good question. Thank you, Daniel. Hedia?
We boast of a very secure vetting process. In reality, I have to tell you, it's not that great. In other words, we have to rely on the intel agencies of the host country, and oftentimes that's severely lacking in capabilities. So unless someone has blown something up or is clearly a terrorist, that host country that that individual is coming from doesn't really know what terrorist groups they're involved in. I do know that occasionally in new applicants, there is a lot of open source intelligence that immigration enforcement departments will go through. In other words, vetting the person directly based on social media and open source, what we call open source intelligence, which has been helpful in a number of cases. But for the most part, there is no effective way of doing that if somebody isn't on the host country or on Interpol's radar.
Let's go to Steve in Florida. Stephen, line 3. Hi, Stephen.
Hey, good afternoon, Brannon and Hedia.
Hi.
Hey, I wanted to mention this real quick. I was telling my pastor and the men in our Bible study last night for church. Psalm 75 says, "Lift not up the horn, which is a symbol of power, authority, neither speak with a stiff neck. For promotion cometh neither from the east, nor from the west, from the south, but God is the judge. He putteth down one, setteth up another." Proverbs 21:1. "The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, as the rivers of water. He turneth it whithersoever he will." And then, of course, what God told Nebuchadnezzar, "The Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men." So my point is this: kingdoms rise and fall. God even says in Isaiah, all the nations are as a drop in a bucket, are counted as a small dust in the balance. They are nothing and less than nothing in his sight. What I want us to keep in mind is that, yes, men make choices in leadership, and we do need to be concerned. I've been a prepper for over 10 years, but here's the thing. Ultimately, God is in control. his will be done. You see in the Bible where when men make bad choices, God will actually turn their heart to stay that way, like Pharaoh. Abimelech took Abraham's wife, Sarah, and then God told Abimelech that he restrained him from sinning against him by being with her. So my point is that we need to keep in mind God is still on the throne. His will is going to be done. We need to pray for our leaders in this whole situation. I just read today, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. But ultimately, his kingdom will come and his will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And when Jesus Christ comes back to this earth and rules as King of Kings and Lord of Lords and flaming fire taking vengeance on his adversaries, it's going to be over with for Satan and his crowd. So
Indeed
my
it is.
comfort
Excellent.
that
Thank
even
you,
though I'm
Steve.
concerned-
Appreciate that. I got to cut you off just because we've got calls lined up, but I can't disagree with that. Line 2, John in Pennsylvania. Thank you, John, for calling in.
Yeah, hi, Brannon. I haven't talked to you in a while. I was thinking you were talking about New York City and what happened last night. Remember, Barron Trump goes to college there. I'm sure Melania's a little upset about that situation, and something to think about.
Yeah. Well, I think the whole Trump family and organization would have to be concerned because, again, this guy is specifically called out President Trump and his policies and his worldview and what he's doing. So the whole thing's concerning. Thank you to all the callers. Hetty, your website's resurrectministry.com, resurrectministry.com. If people wanted to bring you in to speak, to give your testimony, will they find out about that on your website?
Yes, so I have a contact us comment page where you could click down and it says speaking events or questions, and people can reach me anytime there. So even if you have a question, I answer those emails directly myself. So drop me a line. I would love to hear from you.
Excellent. Hetty, a great guest as always. Looking forward to having you with us this fall at our national conference.
Me too. I'm really looking forward to it.
We
Thank
are as
you.
well. Looking forward to meeting you in person finally, and your husband as well, who we had a great conversation with a week ago as well. Nice guy.
Fantastic.
He worked with dogs for 40 years. So I said to Logan after we got the phone, I really like that guy. Anybody that works with dogs for 40 years gets an A+ on my scorecard. Plus, he's just a nice guy all the way around. So you'll appreciate meeting her and her husband. Great couple. All right. I hope you'll stay tuned for Crosstalk with Jim Schneider coming up at vcy.org. Thanks for listening. Take care. And we're back with WROS out of Jacksonville, Florida, and Worldview Tube. Before we conclude today, folks, I want to remind you again, it's so vital, folks, you understand how it is we do what we do. That reminds you that. Because here we've been broadcasting live programming for 7 days. Normally, I don't broadcast on Saturdays. Normally, I'm studying as I'm teaching through the book of Revelation, which I did do Sunday night. But folks, we've been jumping on and going a couple hours on Saturdays now with all the live news. So several weeks now of 7 days straight. So again, if you appreciate what we're doing here, and if you think that what we're offering you here is a service, then we do need your support. We appreciate all of our sponsors at worldviewtube.com/sponsors. You'll find a lot of great products and stuff there that we use. Melissa and I use, Bella Grace, Nubian, all that, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. But one of our very biggest sponsors, folks, is our foundation. And if it were not for our foundation, we wouldn't be able to put out a lot of the programming we do for free. We would have to say, it's too expensive to develop it. It's going to have to go behind a paywall. Or we would have to say, you know what? If you don't catch it live, you don't get to hear it. We're more than happy to broadcast it live. But after that, it goes immediately behind a paywall in order to urge those who can't keep up and who could keep up every day with all the content we're putting out. You'd get behind, right? And therefore, you would miss programs if every live program after it was off the air went behind a paywall. And that would force you to join our vault. But we don't even do that. We let you watch the programs for free, and then we turn around and put them online for 7 days for anyone that wants to listen again or got behind and wants to catch up or really appreciated a program and says, I want to share that with my family and friends. You can then go post it out there, and people can access it for 7 days. And we pay the bandwidth bill, which between the bandwidth bill and the storage of those digital files is like $8,000 a month. So what I'm saying to you is, folks, it's summer and people are already in the 4th of July vacation mode. And we cannot sustain a network when we broadcast like we do. And there's days, like I had a couple Saturdays ago, $90 came in online. $90, $90. That wouldn't, I don't think, cover an hour of operation expense. Remember, we have all kinds of expenses related to just keeping these servers cool so they don't overheat. We have to run an AC unit, multiple AC units, 24 hours a day, 12 months out of the year. Remember, we're in the Mid-South. So even on a chilly day, those rooms with those servers can get really hot. Even if it's cold outside, those rooms get really hot. So we have to run the air conditioning 24/7, 12 months out of the year. You know what that bill is like? And then I just go on down the line and give you our bills. And at some point, you're like, wait a minute. This is getting out of hand. I'm not so sure we can keep pushing out free programming. If they catch it when we're live, great. But after that, it's going to have to go behind a paywall. We're going to have to start forcing people to support us. I don't want to do that because I don't want the single mom cut off. I don't want the individual, maybe senior adults or on fixed income. We get emails regularly from people saying, thank you for making your program available. Here's my situation financially. If you put it all behind a paywall, I can't afford it right now. I hope to one day, but I can't now. I don't want all those people cut off. I also don't want all the seekers. There's a lot of people seeking for truth right now. You know that? That's why our numbers are going up. Do we want all these people that are seeking truth to not have the opportunity to hear truth? No. That's why we put it out largely as what we call a broadcast ministry. And with the events going on in Israel right now and in the Middle East and the world, do you know how many people are brand new tuning into us? We know because we can see the numbers. And our numbers are some of the highest we've ever had the last couple of weeks. That means a lot of people are tuning into us. And you know what someone said the other day? Logan said someone watched us on YouTube. They were watching our programming, and apparently they didn't realize I was a Christian. And then they tuned into our Sunday night service where I'm teaching through the book of Revelation verse by verse, and they commented and said, really? He teaches the Bible as well? Wow. Now, they really appreciated our programming, and they obviously picked up, hey, this guy's a patriot, he's a conservative. But apparently she didn't realize that we teach the Bible here. We believe the Bible. And she was blown away to think that we have a Sunday night church service teaching through the book of Revelation. Well, you know what else? We have people saying, I don't understand this book. I don't go to church, but I'm really enjoying this study and hearing this. This is all new to me. I've never heard anyone teach the Bible like you do. Do you know we're hearing that from people? I've never heard or seen anyone teach the Bible the way you take it verse by verse. And when necessary, you go back to the original language and you put it in a way that lay people can understand. No one's ever taught the Bible to me like this. Well, there are other people doing it. There are. But they've never heard it. Now, folks, we're not going to cut those people off from hearing truth. So if you appreciate what we're doing, we need your support, and we need it now. WorldviewFoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. Please do so today. Consider setting up an automatic contribution. WorldviewFoundation.com. Thank you.